I became aware of Amy in, I think it was 2004. It was around the time of the Frank album. And I remember, I think I was here in England, and I was shooting. I think I was either working on Top Dog Underdog, the the play at Royal Court, or I was shooting Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And I saw this ad for the Frank album, and it's that great ad where she's got on the pink top, and there was just something uh, about this person, this energy that I could sense from just the photograph. She was kind of wide, smile on her face, and she's being. People were really enthusiastic about her. And then I heard the record, and I understood why. And from the moment that I heard the record, I was like, man, the moment that she hits the stage, she's gonna be a huge deal.
Now, that's a. I think I met her at some. She was at some jazz awards, like jazz awards for young people, and I think she was up for one. And that's a pretty difficult criteria at jazz award these days because nobody's quite sure what it is really anymore. But she was up for one, and then I remember particularly some record company had a party, and she was there, and I was there for some reason, and I noted that she was up for having a party, which I rather liked. But also, I liked her attitude, and I was talking to her for a bit, and I liked her, and then I realised we were going to be staying up a bit later than whoever else it was. They were all sort of longing to get away. We might have gone somewhere else for a drink. I can't remember, but I liked her because of her knowledge of music, and the music she talked about that she loved was also the music that I'd loved.
So when Guy Mook called me about this girl who I later found out went to EMI because she heard a record I did for Left Eye Lopez, who also had died that year before, called Block Party. And she wanted to know whoever did that, they can figure out what I want to do with my stuff. So she went to EMI looking for me. And of course, this was kind of like a thing at that time where they would go, someone's looking for me, then they might end up getting signed. So she ended up getting signed. And then now the thing was convince me to do it because I've always been someone who selected who I would work with. I just didn't work with everyone, even now, especially because I'm pretty much off the market in that way. But I always kind of selected the projects I knew I could deliver on or something that really inspired me. And being that I worked in so many different genres, I had the ability to pick and choose and still be busy all the time. So guy says, no, meet this girl. I'm like, I don't feel like it, whatever. He's like, just meet her. Okay, can I send her there to just meet you? So, eventually, in hindsight, I ended up looking and saying, no, she ended up coming over, was it May 27th, 2002, which is pretty much, a couple weeks after my 30th birthday. A couple Mondays after, I was like, okay, I'm here now. And by that time, I'd moved everything out of New York, totally taken all of my stuff. Storage is here. I had nothing in New York, like no real connection outside of family.
And who did she come with?
Uh, Amy came with Nick Shemansky. Nick was the red face, Judd Hirsch looking, um, her sidekick basically. I felt like they were like 19 and 20 years old or something like that. Like they both were like kiddish basically. So Nick was like, hey, how you doing? Okay, we're happy to be here. And then I was just looking at her, so she was sitting down. It's kind of like she was probably sitting on the chair you're sitting on right now, actually. That was in one side of my studio. And I was like, so what's up? And then she picked up her guitar and actually started singing. And when she started singing and playing the guitar, it was a really high story, high ceiling room. And she lit up the whole room. And the first thing she started singing was Girl from the Beam. And I was like, And she would always laugh at me. I was like, oh, you can sing. Okay, I couldn't tell if you were just faking or miming or this is some Erica Badu jazzy knockoff.
What do
At
you mean
that
by
point,
that? Because I've heard you say that a couple of times. Was that when Erica Badu came out? Did everyone try and copy her style?
well, I couldn't tell if she was mimicking a style or if she actually had vocal and vocal ability. Like not everybody, a lot of people can mime. I can mime a style, but I'm not really a vocalist in that way. So I couldn't tell if she was styling and just doing a little something because I'm in like a little Billie Holiday vibe, or if she actually had the ability to emote a song and really do it. So from her previous recordings, I couldn't tell if that was there. But when I heard her sing in front of me, I could tell not only could she sing in that type of tone, but she could belt in that tone. And also at the same time, she was able to, just like how she was picking her notes, like she was really like a jazz in singer. She had the ability, she had the stylings of a 65-year-old jazz singer who knew the ropes up and down, and you were going to get a different performance every time. I could hear that in her first singing for me in front of me, and I was like, okay, oh, this is real. All right, so this is going to be fun. So what are we going to do? We're going to record songs with no beat to it. This is all about you and recording your vocals, so I feel what I just felt sitting in front of you.
I guess the first time I became aware of Amy was I was in the UK in 2003. My first album had come out, and it was around Carnival. And Carnival in London's a pretty amazing time. I mean, especially in West London. And I was here the first time, DJing these massive sound systems and playing shows with Mos Def, and it was a memorable time for me. And then I just remember that everywhere I went, there was this billboard of Time Out that Amy was on the cover that week. And I just remember thinking, like, I just kept thinking, who's this Amy Winehouse girl? And then I remember thinking to myself a little bit in the back of my head, like, oh, I wonder if she's Jewish, because I guess there's so few Jews, like, in popular music that you always, like, obsess about. Well, I do. I don't know why. And then she had that song In My Bed that sampled one of my favorite Nas records, Made You Look. So I was playing that in my DJ set.
The first time I met Amy, she came up to see me. And her girlfriend at the time. And she came up to see us. I was staying at this place in Watford. And she came into the room. She had a girlfriend with her. And I had this window that just kind of looked out onto the property. And she was really sweet. It was my first time meeting her. She was kind of like sweet and nervous. And my lady at the time we were listening to the album, so we were big fans, So it was like, it was nice moment. And I remember she was standing behind me, and I was looking in the window. I could see her reflection in the window. She was being like very polite and everything, but then I remember looking up in the window, and I could see her mouthing behind my back. She was going.
She was saying, mouthing what?
I love you. She's like with clenched fists and everything, and I never acknowledged it. But I just thought it was so sweet. I was like, is she? Oh. It was really flattering. It was sweet, but it's like to her, she was like, I'm such a huge fan, blah, 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 blah. And I was asking her about her lyrics and everything. And but she was like, you and Andre 3000, I want to marry you. She was like, I don't mean any harm to your girlfriend. I have a boyfriend myself, but I love you. And she was so sweet to me, man. She was really, she was awesome, man. I was like, wow, this girl is talented. She's funny. She's kind of wild. She was really cool. But you know, it's the strangest thing about drugs. It will just change the constitution of a person. That was the craziest shit to me. It was like there was two different eras of knowing her. You know, it was crazy. Physically, like in terms of behavior or demeanor, everything was just a complete 180. This shit was crazy. It's crazy to watch that in a person. Like people watch it from a distance as a spectacle, but like you be like, what the fuck is going on?
She liked a lot of ska music. She loved Motown music. She loved a lot of jazz singers, and it was very refreshing because she was a young woman and not an old bloke in a corduroy jacket who liked all of these things. So it was kind of great. And so we had sort of great musical chats and a few drinks, and then went on our way. And I thought, oh, I like her. But at that point, I I'd sort of heard her sing the once, but I don't know if I hadn't really taken in how what her voice was, which was the unbelievable part about her, I think, because I think that when people play a musical instrument or they have a voice, it's connected with their personality. It's an expression of their personality. So when you hear a great guitar player or a great singer, it's not just their technique, but it's part of their spirit, especially with the voice that you're hearing. And when that's combined, which is very rare, with somebody who has just an incredible God-given voice, the two things together really, it's very rare to have that. Sometimes you get a person with an amazing voice, but they either haven't lived a life or aren't sort of sensitive to the things in the music they're singing about, which also means having a knowledge of to be an artist, which she was, you've got to be aware of the things, the music you're referring to, which she really was. And so I think she was an extraordinary artist because her voice was an extension of her, and her voice was an amazing voice.
A couple of years later, Guy Moot, who signed me to EMI Publishing and signed Amy, said, "Oh, Amy Winehouse is in town for one day. Do you know her? Do you have any desire to meet with her?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, just send her over to my studio." So she came over, and I had this studio on Mercer Street, just by Canal, downtown New York. And it was like an old abandoned kind of like warehousey type building. You had to like manually work the lift. And I showed up, and she was waiting downstairs, and I said, "Oh, you waiting for Mark?" And she goes, "Yeah." And I go, I'm Mark." And she just looked at me sort of puzzled. She already had the outfit that became her iconic look, like a kind of satin tight jacket and a little leopard ballet slippers and some jean shorts and the hair. And she said, "Oh, you're Mark Ronson." And I said, "Yeah." She goes, "I thought you were like an old guy with a beard or something." Maybe she had me pegged as more of a Rick Rubin type. And so we went upstairs, and we just started talking about music. I think it's always like these awkward combination of like a blind date and some, like, all right, throw people in a room and start making music together. And I always feel like it's better just to, there's so much trust and things that go on in the creative process that like you have to establish some kind of connection before you jump right in.
We kept in touch through friends. Whenever I was in town, she would, come by, say hello, come see me at if I had a show, we would hang out. She wasn't really a telephone person.
No?
Not with me, and I'm living in the States, she's living here. But I kept tabs on her through mutual friends and her manager at the time, Clive. And we all had we all knew we were all in the same circle, so there was a part of, we shared in her success. We was like, oh, that's, Amy, that's the homie. She's doing it, And it was weird at that time because I remember feeling like really happy for her and also like really like concerned. Like, man, I just hope baby girl gonna be all right. That was my main thing. I was like, I hope, I hope she's gonna be okay.
She's the best of anyone I've ever worked with. Definitely. As far as talent, expression, range. All those things are great in their technical terms and they're important, but it's just like how much you feel something at the end of the day. Tone is the one gift because that's something that you're just born with, the way that you sound when you sing. And that, she was lucky to just have a magical tone that just brought everyone in. Tone is one of the things that is really special, and I don't. The other technical things are not as important. I think it's just like how much you really believe that she meant those songs, and that also goes into the lyrics and the melodies and the mood of the song. So they're all so they're also interlinked because you can't really separate like why you feel it so much. You feel it so much because she takes this melodic turn there, or are you feeling it because the lyric just feels so raw and honest, and it's probably not that easy to separate.
And her songwriting was another whole thing. So she's got this incredible instrument, which is her voice, which is made even greater by the fact that it is her personality that you're hearing as well, and her life that you're hearing in when she plays and sings. But then she also has actually an incredible gift for poetry. And I realised that when what was the first record that came out? Frank, yeah. When Frank first came out, I realised that when Frank first came out, and she came here to this studio where we were doing a radio show, and she wanted to do. She said, "I'll do one of the songs from it. I'll just teach it to you. It's really easy." And which was, let me just get to this. Love's a losing game.
In general, my way of production is really just to let people be who they are. Who are you really? Okay, go ahead, be it. And then let me figure out how to package who you are in the right frame to fit on the wall that it needs to go onto. And that's when things are spoken. Like almost all the artists I've worked with, I've encouraged them to write, or when maybe their company wasn't saying that. So at first, it was really about, Felix Howard or this person or that person getting in and writing with Amy because they felt that she needed that top line, which maybe she did. But I looked at it like she just needed the development of her own ideas, and then once she got better at that, no one could write better than her. To be honest, Frank was more musically intelligent than maybe the simple pop mind. And that's really what it was about. It was about her saying, I'm not a singer, I'm a jazz singer. And then me also taking I'm a jazz singer and trying not to make it sound like neo soul. So things like Halftime and things that came out later, I intentionally didn't put anything on the first record that felt like it was a typical way to approach jazz, hip hop, and soul. I intentionally did things that were super jazzy, like I Heard Love Is Blind, and like the horns on there, everything there was meant to be a little bit classier, a reggae version of Moody's Move for Love. It was like a vocalese thing that turned into something else. The In My Bed, the breaks in between In My Bed, I wanted to really feel like a big band thing meets a hip hop thing. So I tried to use the rawest elements of each, whether it was vocally, song-wise. She was definitely, the only time, and I remember a line, Gaffer was in the room, and she's singing, the second verse of In My Bed, and then she gets to like right the end of the verse before the B section, and she says, the only time I hold your hand is to get the angle right. So Gatfield, Nick Shemansky, and myself were sitting in the room, I'm like, did she just say what I think she said? It's like, I think so. I was like, Amy, what did you say there? She's like, you heard me. It's like, did you say the only time I hold your hand is to get the angle right? And she's like, yeah, which was, for me, initially the In My Bed record started as Yellow Rice, based off of Wild Garcia's. And then she had the chord changes, and she was just pretty much humming over the top of it. Then that turned into her starting to write this song, which was the verses. But I just told her, look, I can put a beat underneath these chords, and I knew what I was going to do as far as using the same sample I used on Major Look. But I was like, if the song's not stronger than the beat, I'm not giving you the beat. The song has to be stronger. So I really forced her to make sure her song and her lyrics and everything she was saying had a message and there was something really to it, so that the beat could really be propelled further. And that was really the element. So it was really me being able to use raw hip hop, raw jazz music, because I knew that she was really going to come home with the lyrics and her delivery of them. When we were doing Unholy War and some of those songs, we went to a record store here in Miami, me, her, and my assistant at the time, Leah. And we bought all these CDs, and she was like, okay, I like this one, the Shangri-Las, you know. She bought a bunch of records that ultimately is like what the Back to Black and all those things sound like. She was really the driving force of, these are the things I like about it. Even if Blake liked certain music, she would pick out of it what she wanted to do with it. I like this song, I wrote it like this, but I wanted to feel like that. And she was definitely inspired by stuff, but then she was also really specific. I love this song, leave it in my iTunes. Salaam, you hear that song playing? Can you delete it out of my iTunes so it never accidentally plays again? All or nothing.
And I just asked her what kind of record that she wanted to make. And she said, well, I have these songs, but I love all this music that they played down at my local, which I guess was the good mixer. She told me that she used to go there with her boyfriend and play snooker all the time, and they would hustle other, people there for money, and it all sounded very like The Craze meets Sid and Nancy, super romantic, but I couldn't tell if how it sounded very gangster. I was like wondering if I bought the story, but she was just she was instantly just so cool. I liked her in the first 5 minutes. And then as you start talking about music and you get more and more excited, oh, have you heard this? Have you heard this? No, have you heard this? And that's kind of how the first 2 hours went. She played me things like the Shangri-Las that I wasn't really that familiar with. Then we both had a common bond on like Motown and soul records like The New Birth from the early 70s. And then shared love of like golden era hip hop like Nas and Mos Def and things like that. And usually when you have a singer come to the studio for the first time, you play a bunch of beats that you have or some instrumental tracks, and you go, oh, do you like this? But I could just tell like I didn't have anything special as what she was on about, and I wanted to impress her, and I think she was supposed to go back to London the next day. But I said, go back to the hotel, because she was staying at the Soho Grand around the corner. I was like, let me have a night to work on something, like just come up with an idea and come back tomorrow and see if you like it. So she left. I think we'd spent like 4 hours just talking up to that point. And I was just inspired, and I don't know why. I just went and sat in the piano. It was 10 o'clock. It was late. I think the engineer, everyone gone home, and I was just by myself. And I went and sat at the piano, and just the Back to Black chords just sort of came out. And I'm not really like big like sit at a piano guy and start writing, but I was inspired by the vibe and the energy of the music that we've been listening to. And so I came up with the chords, and then I went over to this little drum kit that I have, and I'm not much of a drummer, but I figure out I can just bang out like a kick, ba-boom, ba-boom, with the tambourine. I didn't really have any fancy gear, so I just put shitloads of computer reverb on it to make it sound like instant, like Phil Spector, like in the cheapest way I could. And that was kind of it. So she came back the next day, and I was excited about it, but then you always come back the next day and you're like, oh, is this any good? And it's the moment of truth when you play it for somebody and they're in the room. And she just had such a dry, unexcitable demeanor. Like, even the whole time I knew her, there are very few times I saw like really like beam. Like, that wasn't her way of showing joy and affection. And I guess at first it takes a bit of getting used to, because I played her the track, and I looked back and I was like, so what do you think? Because I wanted her to like it, because I wanted us to do, I just felt like there was something there that if we worked together. And she was like, yeah, I like it. Like, just super dry. And she's like, I just gotta go make a phone call. And she went in the back, and I think my manager called me at that time. He goes, how'd it go with the Winehouse girl? And I was like, I don't know, I just played her this track, but I don't know if she's crazy about it. And then he's like, oh, hold on, I got another call. So then he had another call at the same time that it was like Darkus or someone from the label saying like, oh, cool, Amy just says she's over the moon over the Sing Mark place. She's going to stay another 5 days. So it was like just one of those, like, I guess, ridiculous, like if you could have the split screen with all the phone calls going on, it would have looked like a farce. But she stayed for 5 days, and I think that first day she wrote Back to Black, all the lyrics and the melody, and like it was like 2 or 3 hours. Like I remember she just like went in the other room, she would take her guitar, or she'd take a little tape of the instrumental CD and just kind of have it playing and go in the other room at my studio. Came back and she just sang it. And sometimes when you're working with somebody and you're in the creative process, they come back and then you go, oh, that's good, but can you change this or can you edit it? And I just remember it just like she sang it and none of those thoughts occurred to me. And I can be quite pedantic and annoying in the studio because I think like you can improve if you can improve every turn of phrase, every syllable, every note run, why not? And it just felt like that's what the song was supposed to be. I never questioned it. It was like that's how it always was. It just sounded right as soon as she sang it. I do remember the first lyric that in the chorus it used to go, we only said goodbye in words, I died 1,000 times, you go back to her and I go back to black. And I was like, don't you think it should rhyme somewhere else though? Because like, we only said goodbye in words, you died 1,000 times, can't you make those rhyme? And she just goes, no. And I was like, okay. Because she was also brutally honest in the studio, which was a really good lesson that I learned from her. Because in the studio, when two people are creating, one person says, this is my idea. In essence, they're saying, this is an extension of my feelings. This is me. So if you say, I don't like it, or that idea is shit, or it's not really working for me, you're saying, like, in some roundabout way, like, I don't like your feelings. So it's always a very, like, people's feelings get hurt, and there's fights and blowouts in the studio. And I remember playing her something one time, and I was like, do you like it? She's like, no. I was like, oh, well, what about if I change this one little part, like trying to fix something that was just never going to make much of it. She goes, no, I still don't like it. I was like, are you sure? Like, is it this part you don't like? And like muting different things in the track. She's like, no, it's shit. Like, why do you keep trying to fix it?
I'm very fortunate because I see a lot of musical artists close up, and you realise what their power is. Then sometimes you realise that when they're sort of thrumming on their guitar, there's a huge sound comes out. When they sing, there's ever such a lot to it when you're in the close proximity. And when she came on, she said, "I've got this new song I want to do. Love's a Losing Game." I mean, she said, "But I can just play it to you. You'll figure it out. It goes like this. You just look, I'll sing it." And I then really realised what a genius of a songwriter she was, because it was the hardest songs to write are like the ones that appear to be the most simple, not many chords, and actually you can fit all the words onto like sort of half a sheet of paper, and they're like the greatest songs, like Yesterday or Your Cheating Heart or whatever the great songs of all time. They're often the simplest. They're the most difficult ones to do, and I realised she'd written one of those. She wrote loads else as well, but it dawned on me when I heard that one, and I said to her, I said, "Hey, and I think it's because after the last record, which was great, but I said, that's amazing in that song. That's a really you've kind of you're a poet, Which
and how did she take that?
She was very self-depreciative, which musicians are largely, and about things. And especially when you compliment them, they're always, oh, that was a load of old shit, really, or whatever, or knocked it together. Or maybe I think she was quite pleased. I think she said something like, "Yeah, knocked it together." Sounds all right, doesn't it? Yeah, all right. It's all great understatement that she had. She had a lot of that.
And then Rehab, she also wrote while we were in New York, and she was going out with Alex at the time. and we were walking by Ben Sherman, that shop. It was in Soho, around the corner from my studio, and she wanted to buy him a shirt. She was very like thoughtful, especially about her like men in that way. Like those were her guys. Like she was walking by, she was like, I want to buy Alex a shirt. Like, so we went to Ben Sherman, and I think I lent her $20 to buy his polo shirt because I think she didn't have any money at the time. And she was telling me the story. We were walking back from the street, and I was getting to know her a bit more, and she was telling me about some of the tougher times she had gone through before. She never hid any of it, but we were just all about the music the first 2 days, so it took a while to get into a bit of the personal story. And I always thought it was bizarre because everyone had told me, like, when I was going in the studio, like, oh, we're working with Amy, like, good luck with that. She's been working on an album for 3 years or whatever. And I just met her just at the moment where she decided she wanted to kind of be clean and just get it going. That's why I couldn't relate or understand what everyone else was saying about this troubled, procrastinating artist. And but she was telling me about a time when she said it was really bad. She was drinking all the time, and I don't know, can't remember the reason, but she said there was in her apartment, there was blood on the walls everywhere, and her dad and Nick Shemansky came over. I was like, oh geez, what happened? She was like, I'll tell you what happened. She was like, they tried to make me go to rehab, and I was like, no. And she did like the put up the hand, like half Supremes, half like sassy Valley Girl. And it just instantly struck. It was such a hook, and such the way that she said it was had such a cadence. And I was just like, I know this sounds really goofy, but that kind of sounds like a song. Like we should go back to the studio and work on it. So we walked back up there, and she started to work on it. She had it written it on the guitar as a 12-bar blues, and it was more of like a swampy, like they tried to make me go to rehab. And we had been listening to My Boyfriend's Back and all those kind of records that all had that like boom. So I said, well, why don't we try that? Does that work for you? And she was like, yeah, that's cool. And then, maybe not just a 12-bar blues, but maybe some kind of more jangly chords for the verse. And she kind of just came up with those chords. And then what she would do, the way we worked a lot of the times, because I don't like to work with someone hovering over me because I get, insecure. It's like it's hard for me to fiddle through all the evolution of my ideas when I'm constantly aware that someone's listening or maybe judging. It's my own issues. But she would leave at night, and I would work on the tracks. So she would leave me either like a chord chart, and some of her chords were pretty like in depth, like complicated jazz chords. Like she'd really have to teach me the voicings and stuff, because that stuff came really naturally to her. And she'd leave me a chord chart, maybe record a quick demo on a tape recorder of her singing it, so I remembered how it went. Then she'd leave, and then I'd mess around. I'd sit behind the drums, play 150 different beats till I found the one that felt the best for the song, then overdub some guitar. And I'd have this kind of demo that by the time she came in the next morning, she could be like, sing it in her head over the track, be like, does that work? That was it. So that's how, Wake Up Alone. And with Rehab, she came in, and I was kind of working on it the next morning, and I put this drum beat in the verse. It was kind of like the boom, boom. And I guess for the type of music that we came from and what we loved, which was soul and jazz and hip hop, it was a pretty non-conventional beat, because it's almost like, it's like an indie beat in a way. And I remember she came in and she heard it, and she was like, oh, are you trying to make me sound like the Bloody Libertines? She like had jokes for everything. But that's what's kind of cool about that song. It's like, it's so not conventionally any bit of it's just this weird jumble of its influences, with her very unique singular voice and lyrical approach on top of it. And I think that's why when Darkus, who had signed Amy, came and heard the music for the first time, our demos, about 5 days into it, and he heard that and he started freaking out. He's a very excitable, infectious character. So we're 10 seconds into Rehab, and he starts going like, bo, 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 rewind. Like we're like Notting Hill Carnival. So I brought it back, and he did it again, and we brought it back, and I was excited that he liked it. I knew it was good because I knew that we liked it. I knew there was so little outside exertion on what we were making because there were no expectations. Amy wasn't really a massive artist. She'd been away for a while. I never made a hit record before, so we were really just left to our own devices and without the pressure of feeling like we had to make a hit. So when Darkest went crazy over Rehab, I just thought it was so bizarre because to me it didn't sound like anything on the radio. It was just something that we made because we liked it. And I remember just thinking like, oh, that's cool that he liked.
I saw her here in England, and it was at the time where it was just like, you know, she was a major star. And the paparazzi were on her. Because she really didn't know how to be that thing that she had been made out to be or had been kind of pushed to become from her own success. So she completely disregarded it, and I think a lot of the time she was just in another state of mind anyway. So, you know, she became like this spectacle for the media and the paparazzi. And that wasn't a lot of fun to witness. The thing that I always find interesting is that for most of the people witnessing something like that, they have no connection to that person as a person. This person is just a figure. Almost like some distant object. But if it's a person that's going through that, that's your friend, that you know beyond their talent or their capabilities, and that you just appreciate as an individual, it's almost like it's happening to you. To a certain degree. You're like, man, damn, that's, you know. So there was an element of that to it for me and for all of us, you know.
I went to the Grammys. Yeah, and I was kind of bummed out that Amy couldn't be there because it seemed like maybe she's going to be able to come up to the last minute, and then they said no because we went through this journey together, so you kind of want to be there sitting next to your, you know, your kind of partner that you did this stuff with. But I had a real Zoolander moment at the, they were about to do Record of the Year, which is the award that goes to the producer and the artist. And this camera guy comes up to me, puts the camera, he goes, "You Mark Ronson?" It's like, yeah. He's like, all right, they're doing Record of the Year because they're filming everybody, just so whoever wins, they've got a camera on them. So they read the award and they go, and it's, you know, Grammy goes to Mark Ronson and Amy Winehouse for Rehab. So I get up out of my seat, and I'm only in the second row, and I start to climb the stairs, and it's like, it plays back in slow motion in my head. Just as I'm like on the third step with the entire Staples Center behind me, the screen starts to come down because it's obviously Amy on tape from London. And I mean, who wants to fucking see the producer when you can see Amy Winehouse on a giant screen? And so it was kind of too late. So I sort of like tried to backpedal down the stairs, but then sort of fell over and landed like right at Kanye West's feet. And I just remember being like, "Do you mind if I hang out here for a minute?" And he was totally fine with it. I knew him anyway. But it was funny. I was thinking like, because nobody told me like, oh, Amy's gonna accept the award from London, she's on the screen or something like that. But I think actually, if I knew that was going to be the thing, I probably would have gone to London. If I could have been there on that night with her, it probably would have been more fun.
She didn't give a shit, man. She didn't care. It mattered to her that people connected to it. in a real way, and that it really represented her. You know, the thing that's so great about Back to Black is that it was sincere. She wasn't doing it as it was just where she was at the moment, you know? And it was such a departure from Frank. But all of those elements, you know, her sense of melody, her love of hip hop, expressed in a song that is not a hip hop song. You know, me and Mr. Jones, I mean, it's like a, you know, it's a love song to a rapper. You know, I love that song. You know, because it's real. It was like something she would say, like, to her husband, like, listen, Nas is here on so and so. I'm not missing this show for you. So if you fuck this up, it's going to be a misunderstanding. Yeah, and it was just, she didn't care about none of that. And a lot of people around her did. And a lot of people didn't expect Amy to do that. People did not expect Black to Black to do that. They didn't expect Frank to do that. They were thrown off by Amy. You know, it's something that they couldn't quite put their finger on, but she was like outside of their control or frame of reference. They wasn't, you know, used to dealing with nobody that young either who was just like, I'm just doing what I'm doing because, you know, I enjoy doing it. But because she was a young woman and without airs and just kind of earnest about it, they responded cruelly to her, in my opinion. You know, I was always I'm not quite sure I worked that out why they were so mean to her. I was like, this is more than just, you know, mocking somebody who's had one too many. There's something else at play, in my opinion. And I never really worked out what that was. Why there was like this something else pushing the contempt that they expressed for Amy in the media and their treatment of her addiction, you know. The thing is that Amy's story with the drugs is not new. It's not unique. For me, it's really frustrating and boring and heartbreaking to see good people get crushed up by that shit, you know? Good people that you know, that you know are good people. You know, you see some people survive it, they get past it, and the other people just get chewed up. And some of them just get swallowed and just disappear. So I was hurt for her, but for what it represented, you know, like, you know, man, another, you know, sensitive, really at the heart of it, like a delicate person, you know, somebody that just had no armor for the world coming at them at this high velocity and was trying to, you know, manage their pain. Pain management systems, stress management systems that create more stress and pain. Capitalism don't care about your fucking feelings. Fuck is your feelings? Get this money. Put a bandage on it. Take whatever you gotta take, go out there and put some numbers on the board. That's what the music industry and its energy has done to artistry. It regards it as any other inanimate product. And it's like, 501 jeans, widgets, you. It just is what it is. The system is not going to be any different. The people have to behave differently with themselves, especially if they're going to be engaged in that machine. You're not going to make people be more compassionate or understanding. In the end, you have to give a damn about yourself. Not in some negative, selfish way, but you really got to, take care of your own life, because you can't depend on these people to do it. They're here to make money and, win. That's what they care about. They're here to win. They're not concerned with all of that other shit. They're not even equipped to deal with it. You can't even really be mad at them because they don't have a frame of reference on how to deal with people just socially, let alone like my emotions and what I'm going through. They're not there for that. If you don't take an interest in yourself, those your A&R is not, gonna be the shoulder for you to lean on when shit get tough. He working for a paycheck. I don't see that. I tell you no, I do know. There's nothing you can do. Sorry. Ultimately, the thing that I like about being a musician is that if you're a writer and you're a performer, you are controlling the narrative. There's no stand-in for you, right? So if you don't want to perform, don't. If you need to take a break, you got to be able to tell somebody, I'll catch up with you in 90 days. We need to postpone, because right now what takes a priority is my physical, my emotional, and my mental health. Now I don't mind playing, like, you're traveling. Sometimes you get tired. You're not always performing at optimal conditions. Your back hurts. You may just got over a cold or a flu, or whatever. But you're not supposed to just go out there when you're really not of any use to yourself or the job, and you can't do it. You cannot do it. You have to take care of yourself. So for whatever reason, you're not mentally together or whatever, you got to just be able to say, and you can't depend on your mom or your manager, the A&R, to do it. You have to be able to, because ultimately, when you're in that type of situation where you're pivotal and you're the central figure, you're running the show. It's your bus. You have to be like, well, I'm stopping the bus, I'm pulling over, I'm taking a break, I'm taking a nap. Y'all will be all right. You can pout, you can poke your lips out, whatever. At the end of the day, this is my bus. I'm part of the reason that everybody is here. So I'm not tripping or lording out on anybody, but I'm aware of my value. That I'm not here to just perform to your expectations. That I gotta take care of myself. And and this is part of the reason why when I saw that time in London, I was saying, Amy, it's about you. Like, you have to take care of yourself. You're successful enough. If you need to take a break, just take it. And a lot of us talked about that, like, she just got to get off the road. You got to go away sometime and sort that shit out. And she tried. But people keep you up with, like, opportunities and money, because they don't have a talent like that where they could just, or they don't feel confident enough in their own selves, or they, whatever. The myriad of reasons.
So I got to London on a Thursday. I was staying in Shepherd's Bush. And it was like, okay, cool, I'm going to go and see her. So I got down. I got there, I called the house. I think I was probably supposed to Andrew. And I called Andrew and I was like, what's going on? He was like, oh, boss was over there. She had a couple drinks. I'm like, really? What happened? I thought she stopped drinking because I spoke to her up to that Wednesday before. And I was like, you know, bright eyes, everything else. She stopped drinking for at least 10 days before that. So I was like, what happened? He's like, yeah, she seemed like she got a little pissed off and she wanted certain people to get out the house. So she started drinking when she went to Wild and stuff. They just seemed like to piss people off. And I was like, all right, you know what? The wedding's on Sunday, so I'm going to come by probably on Saturday because I can come today, but I'm like, 20 minutes away. But I didn't go. And then Friday night, Andrew and myself were talking. I was like, Dad, when's the cycle going to stop? She got to stop going off the drink, on the drink. She's too little. She can't handle it. We had a long conversation about that. And I was like, Dad, I got to figure out, like, I was like, who could actually stop it? Because only you can stop her from drinking, for a certain amount of time. But like the cycle, she's too little. She can't handle it. So we had a long conversation about that. And then the Saturday morning, I was picking up some jerk chicken with my boy Dez in Shepherd's Bush. And I called, like, yo, I'm on my way over. I'm bringing some food. Then he called me back and said that she had passed. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, she's gone. Like, and I just heard her the night before while I was talking to him on the phone. So it's kind of like, kick my ass.
So much she wanted to do, man. So much she wanted to do. I'm glad we were friends. Glad we were in each other's life. There's an impulse to like mourn about it and feel heavy about it, and I did that for a while. I got angry about it because I felt like she was just like, again, a lot of it was not self-inflicted, but self-perpetuated. But at the same time, I feel like she didn't get a fair deal with certain things. She made certain choices and put herself in certain positions, but I think that she got beat up on unnecessarily.
The underlying thing of it all is both her being an amazing poet and being very well informed musician and poet and person of the arts, really, because that's what all those things were having to go in for her to then assimilate them and make them her own and come out, and that's what a great artist is, and she really was that. I think she was a truly great artist.
Amy was something else, man. Amy was special. Amy was special to me. A lot of people have, opinions or whatever about her, but that was my homie. That was my people. I loved Amy. I really did. I do.